Howdy friends, welcome back to the Outpost. So glad you could join us. Today we're going to do a little bit of a walk around the area, the property and stuff, show you some of the stuff we've done since we've been here, kind of give you a little bit of an idea of the history of this area as well as how we got here. Now we're going to have to play things a little bit by ear because it's early morning and we've got some bad weather that's on the way, so before this video is over it'll probably be raining. Now we are located in the east part of Callaway County in Western Kentucky. This is old Chickasaw Indian territory. Back in the late 1800s, Andrew Jackson and a few other representatives from the federal government made several treaties with Indians and purchased 8 counties that are out here. But at the time, they weren't counties. Kentucky used to be called Kentuck, and it was a province of Virginia. And after what's called the purchase, and this area being bought, it became Kentucky. Now where we're at is about 1.5 miles down the road from the Great Kentucky Lake. Also there's an area known as Land Between the Lakes and Lake Barkley, which proves to be tournament bass fishing area. Alright, let's take a moment and go back to what we were talking about with the Chickasaw Indians and stuff. Now if y'all caught my video a few days ago and stuff, you saw me and my dog Blaze down at one of the local rivers. We're only down there for about 20 minutes. Let me show you what I picked out of the river in that short period of time we were there. See that? That right there is the remains of an old Indian spearhead made out of rocks. Pretty neat stuff. But better yet, the real find was a genuine arrowhead. Take a look at that baby right there. Now it's got some wear on it and stuff, but it's got definitive qualities of a true Indian arrowhead. Pretty cool stuff. So for the past 2 years, living in Central Florida and stuff, I've been staying full-time, as a lot of you guys know, in a small RV by the river and everything. I've been minding my own business and being smart with my money, and the whole time thinking about how I was going to get out of the area because I was just tired of the rat race of where I was living. And I looked around until I finally found this property and the price was right. And I decided to go ahead and buy it. Now this is a good part of a year ago. I couldn't leave and come up here until I tied up some loose ends. And the realtor had sent me some pictures and a small video and stuff, and it looked pretty good and everything until I got here. Let me explain to you what happened. I ended up quitting my job of several years and taking about a week and getting all my stuff together. We loaded all our stuff up in our boat. We hauled everything we owned straight through. It took about 19 hours to get up to where we're at from East Central Florida. The reason why is because we were loaded down heavy and I had to go slow. But we made it. We ended up getting up here to the area about 12:30 in the morning. Now about an hour before we ended up getting here, I noticed my ears popped. That means we were going into higher elevation. I didn't know the geography of this area. I figured this part of Kentucky was pretty flat, but I was wrong. But when we got here, it was dark, no street lights, we're in the middle of nowhere in the country and stuff. I ended up kind of crawling in the back where Blaze was and tried to get a few hours of shut-eye. And at about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, I started hearing it rain and thunder and lightning. So we got out and got up on the porch. And we'll take a look at all that stuff and everything. Here's what we ended up showing up to. We got a 1999 33-foot Fleetwood Prowler with a nice carport built over top of it. It is a little bit out of date, but then again, so am I. There's a lot of potential to it, but it's not what we showed up to. Let me run through a few of the things that we ran into and we had to correct just to get ourselves to this point. So the morning that we arrived here was a Monday morning, and it was raining, and it rained all day. And we had no way of getting into our camper because the realtor had the keys. Now, I had just talked to him 2 or 3 weeks back and told him when I was planning on being here. So about 8 o'clock in the morning, I decided to start texting him. And it kept coming back as message failed, and I looked down at my phone and found out that we lived out here so far that there was no bars. So at that time I got my dog and we ran into town, which is about 15 miles from here. Not 15 minutes, 15 miles. Rolling country roads, and I'll show you that sometime. And I found a local realty in which he worked at. Walked into the office and I saw the ladies and I introduced myself and told them who I was. And told him that so-and-so was the realtor that sold me the property and that he had the keys. That's when they let me know my second surprise. They told me that the realtor had died 2 weeks earlier from COVID. Now I had no way of getting into my camper. So the lady went in the back of the office and came out with a bag of miscellaneous keys and said, here, take these, see if any of them fit. We ended up making it back out here to the camper, pouring rain, and luckily one of the keys worked. And that's when I first got a chance to see inside of here, and it made my heart drop. As soon as we opened up the door to the camper, the first thing that I felt was crunching underneath my feet. We had no electricity, I had nothing but my flashlight. And being that this camper is underneath the canopy, it made it even more dark. And what I discovered was thousands and thousands and thousands of dead bugs, especially little Asian ladybugs, stink bugs, everything you can imagine. And the place stunk like an old dirty camper. Ain't nobody been in here for the best part of a year. As my heart dropped, I was tired, I wanted some rest, and I wanted a hot shower. But that wasn't going to happen until other things happened first. Now, I knew before we even showed up here that we were going to have a little bit of work, a little cleanup to do, but I had no idea the amount that was involved with this. Remember, we didn't have no electricity whatsoever, and it was still 2 days out before I could get any, no running water. So we ended up having to cook on our little camp stove, ramen noodles, and I had some food for Blaze, and we had bottles of water and stuff like that. But let's take a look around this place, and I'll show you the improvements that I've made and what I consider to be quite the upgrade from that little tiny camper I lived in Central Florida. Alright, so the first thing you see is they actually were nice enough and left me a lazy boy. Woohoo! And let's do a little bit of a walk around. You can see I have a nice big kitchen that's back there in that area. It's a full-size kitchen and a full slide out. That's got a dinette. That's where you see, that's where I sit and I'm going to do my videos, as well as a full couch, which we ended up folding that thing out so we could make it into a bunk and put a sleeping bag down and have somewhere to stay at least until we get the place put together. Let's check out some more of the things in this place. I was pleasantly surprised to find out that the people left a nice fireplace, an electric fireplace. And I've tried this thing out because when we got here it was in the 40s. And remember, it didn't have any electricity, so we had to just bundle up. But this kicks off some nice heat and is going to be a very big player with that cold weather that comes in the wintertime. Now, the worst hit area of this camper was the bathroom. It was totally disgusting. I can't begin to tell you the smell that came out of here. And like I said, every single inch of this entire RV was covered head to toe with dead bugs. But in time, we've cleaned this up. I couldn't take a shower even in here because the caulking inside of the shower was all gone. I had to redo that. Not to mention the shower faucet was leaking back underneath the cabinet of the lavatory. So I had to drive 25 miles to go up to an RV dealership, get the old one out, put a new one in there. But then we ran into another problem. We found out that we didn't have any hot water. So the previous owners had left me a note telling me that they had winterized the camper with antifreeze and stuff for the winter time. And it left me a note telling me how to turn the hot water heater on. Well, if you look back in there, there was a switch, and the switch was bad. When I ended up finding out what breaker that went to, we had to re-hardwire that into place. I got a plate I got to put over top of that. And we ended up finding out that that was one of the big problems with a hot water heater. And I'm going to show you where the hot water heater is and what problems we had with that and what we had to do to get that thing going. Alright, so when we got in here, the bed that was in here was totally dilapidated. We ended up having to take it out of there, and I ended up ordering a new nice memory foam bed and all that good stuff with new bedding and all that, and we finally made it so we have actually a bed for the first time in 2 years to sleep in. It's very nice, very cozy, very private. Alright, let's take a moment and talk about the deck that was put on here. Now, whoever put this property together, they had the right intentions. They just didn't know how to engineer this properly. It's awesome. It's a huge deck. It's a good shelter. It's a good place to get up out from underneath the weather, and it's nice shade when it gets hot and stuff. The problem is when they built this, it was crooked. This whole thing was crooked. I don't know if you can see my hand or not. It was pulled away from the camper. So there was obviously a big oblong gap. What I ended up having to do is I had to get up underneath here with a floor jack and jack it up and push it over. It don't sound like much, but it is a giant, solid, pressure-treated deck, and it took a good part of a day for me just to move that. Let's move on to some other things we had to do. Now, I do apologize about any background noise. As you can see, we got a little community up here. There's another neighbors they don't hear very often. There's a guy that's over there that's in the middle of building a cabin. So you hear some saws and some drills going on, and that's what the background noise you hear besides the storm that's approaching us. One of the big selling parts of buying this property is that it came with a big canopy over top of here and stuff. And that's great because it's helped preserve and protect this camper and stuff. The only problem is people weren't thinking about the weather and what it was going to do to that camper over time. The weather predominantly comes from the south and the west. As you can see, we've got an oncoming storm that's going to be here. You can hear a little bit of rumbling in the background and stuff. Let me show you what I mean when it comes to that canopy and what mistakes they made. Now, if you look, I've got a big master slide here, and this is permanent. It's not going anywhere, and they did somewhat work of trying to skirt this for the elements. Not too bad. The problem is it's right on the corner where all the weather comes, and over time rain started hitting this. On the inside of that slide out, there is some water damage that's on the inside panel. In time we'll have to make some repairs and stuff, and this is what I ended up doing to try to combat things in the future. I ended up going down through and pulling up every single one of the spikes holding down this carport. There was a total of 18 of them. So we took a day after pulling the spikes up. I backed my Hummer up, got to come along with a wishbone attached to the one corner over here and the one corner pole over there, and inch by inch we pulled this canopy forward towards the road about 1.5 feet, and I'm going to explain to you why. The front hitch on this camper was sticking out past where the end of the canopy was, so we moved it forward. I'm going to take a look here, far enough where we could take and continue those panels down to cover the front of this camper from the front and from the side with the same kind of paneling. So there's a company in the area that sells these panels. This way we can protect this part of the camper from the bad weather that comes from the west and the south. Now, this canopy carport and stuff was no joke. It weighs between 2,500 and 3,000 pounds. But somehow by myself, in a course of a day, I was able to hook up a come along and a wishbone rope on the front and slowly, inch by inch, side by side, move this whole thing about 1.5 feet to the west where you hear those storms rumbling and stuff, so we can go to a local company before the cold weather shows up and get the panels and enclose this thing in to keep it protected against that nasty weather. If you look closely back behind me, there is a giant pine tree, and when we got here there were several limbs that had sagged down and were laying on top of this canopy and caused a little bit of cosmetic damage. And that by itself, I had to get and cut all those branches, about 6 trees throughout the property, to try to clean them up. Not to mention the fact the pine needles were over 3 inches thick, and it took me 2 days just to rake up all that garbage and dispose of it. We didn't have any trash removal. Speaking of trash, the previous owners left piles and piles and piles of debris, old lumber, pots and pans and crap. That took me the best part of a week, and I'm still working on trying to clean it up. We got most of it under control. Let's go to the back of the property and I'm going to show you a few more things that we had to do. Here in the back of the RV, somebody at one time had replaced this water heater. The only problem is they had set it down with 2 concrete blocks, which started bowing the floorboard down. It was dangerously at an angle that was unacceptable, so I had to take and pull this thing out, empty it, get all the crap out of there. I built a sub-panel floor out of pressure-treated 2x4s, and then we went ahead and iso-boarded all this stuff up to protect it against the elements and keep our hind ends warm, because right above us is where the bed is. And that took the best part of a day just to do that. Now, that shed came with the property, however it wasn't in that location. It sat right there, and I ended up having to move it because when it rained, all the water was getting into it. Over the course over 20 years, it ended up rotting the bottom frame out of that shed, and they had framing and decking and all that stuff, not to mention the shed was full of trash and all that. Now that stuff in the back belongs to people that have the property adjacent to me. They are from out of state. They just came up here for a couple weeks to work on it. It was also dilapidated, and they have their work they have to do, but we ended up building a deck and moving this whole shed and leveling it off. We did that all by ourselves, and that took the best part of a day. And outside of that, we've been working feverishly to try to clean up all the trash that the previous owners left us. I also put in a security light, as you can see up there, and it's a dusk to dawn because it was super dark back here, and so that way we could have some security and some light in the evening hours, because we back up right to the forest and I want to know what's coming in and out of my yard. I'm also in the middle of extending this deck in the back of the camper, and we're going to be making a laundry room. Okay, we got electricity, got water and everything there, and making it so we don't have to go into town to wash our clothes, which becomes expensive after a while. But in the same midst, we have to enclose this entire area off to winterize this thing, because it gets cold up here in the wintertime. We are also on septic here. I don't know the history of it, so we just got to be mindful. In time, we're probably going to have to get the septic people out here and pump the tank. I don't know if it's ever been pumped, but at least we have somewhere where we can dump our tanks and stuff. So the ultimate goal and game plan of what we want to do here is eventually in the next year or so, I plan on building a cabin right here in this area at the back of my property line, and eventually taking and getting that camper out of here, selling it, doing whatever I have to do, and we're going to end up enclosing this entire canopy and making it into our garage and workshop. So as you can see, life has been pretty difficult for us since we made it up here to the outpost. A lot of hard back-breaking work. And I don't care. I'm used to all that stuff, and nothing's been stressful. It's been rewarding, and we just got here and we've got a lot of stuff done. We got a lot more work to do, but we got game plans set into place, and looking forward to cleaning this place up into being a real gem of a property. On top of that, we don't pay any rent, and my property tax every year is $100. Well, that's going to be a wrap for this one. Thanks for sticking around a few minutes and listening to me jawbone about the place and such. The rain's starting to slowly set in. My priorities when I moved up here were A, make it through the first year. B, winterize and prepare this camper and property for the severe and cold weather months ahead. And C, find ourselves some sort of a job. Speaking of jobs, I have a local plumbing company that's reached out to me. In a couple days, they want me to come into town. They want to hire me. So I got to go in there and do an interview and go through some paperwork, so wish me luck there. Coming from the Western Kentucky Outpost, I'll see you on the next one.